Trump leaned toward his microphone. You ready for this, Jasmine? Big stage, lots of pressure. Some people can't handle it. She didn't respond, just opened her folder and reviewed her notes. And we're live, the moderator announced. Good evening. Tonight's debate will focus on issues of national leadership, policy integrity, and public accountability. First question goes to Congresswoman Crockett. Jasmine spoke clearly. Thank you. Let's talk about what Americans actually care about. Healthcare costs are crushing families. Student debt is destroying futures. Climate change is creating real disasters. These aren't abstract problems. They're hitting people right now. Trump jumped in before the moderator could redirect. That's exactly the problem with Washington. People like her talk about problems but never solve anything. I solved problems. I built things. I created jobs. What has she actually built? I built legislation, Jasmine replied calmly. Bills that protect voting rights. Programs that fund education. Policies that help working families, not buildings with my name on them. Actual help for actual people. The audience murmured. Trump smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Legislation that goes nowhere, he shot back. Papers that sit on desks. I'm talking about real things. Steel and concrete. Jobs you can touch. Money in people's pockets. Jasmine nodded. Then let's talk about the money. Your tax cuts gave billions to corporations. Those companies didn't create more jobs. They bought back their own stock. CEOs got richer. Workers got nothing. That's not building. That's transferring wealth upward. Trump's face reddened slightly. Those companies expanded. They invested. You don't understand business. You've never run anything except your mouth. The moderator tried to intervene. Mr. Trump, please address the policy. I am addressing policy. The policy of putting people in charge who don't know what they're doing, who get elected by saying nice things but can't actually manage anything. Jasmine stayed calm. I've managed a legal practice. I've managed a congressional office. I've managed legislation through committee. But more importantly, I've managed to stay consistent. My positions don't change based on who I'm talking to. Can you say the same? Trump leaned forward. I say what needs to be said. I adapt. That's what leaders do. They don't stick to some script written by staffers. There's a difference between adapting and contradicting yourself, Jasmine countered. You've taken opposite positions on the same issue in the same week. That's not leadership. That's confusion. The audience reacted. Some applause, some murmurs. Trump's jaw tightened. This was going exactly how Jasmine expected. He was getting frustrated. Frustrated people made mistakes. The debate continued for 20 minutes. Jasmine stayed focused on facts, figures, specific examples. Trump went broad, talked about feelings, attacked Washington, praised himself. The problem with people like her, Trump said during a question about immigration, is they don't understand strength. They want to be nice. They want to be liked. But the world doesn't work that way. You need strength. You need people who aren't afraid to be tough. Strength isn't cruelty, Jasmine replied. Separating children from parents isn't strength. It's cruelty disguised as policy. Real strength is creating systems that actually work, that process people fairly, that maintain security while respecting human dignity. Human dignity, Trump repeated mockingly. That's a nice phrase. Sounds good. But when criminals are pouring across the border, when drugs are flooding our streets, you need more than nice phrases. You need action. I agree we need action, Jasmine said, but effective action. Not theatrical action designed for television. Border security improved under policies that combined enforcement with actual immigration reform. Not walls that don't get built, not bans that courts strike down, actual functional policy. Trump waved his hand dismissively. Courts full of activist judges, appointed by people like her, people who don't care about America, who put other countries first. Jasmine's expression didn't change. I've never put another country first. I've fought for American workers, American families, American rights. But I recognize that we live in a world with other nations. We can't just yell and expect everyone to fall in line. That's exactly what we can do when we're strong, Trump insisted. When I was in charge, other countries respected us. They feared us. Now they laugh at us. They didn't respect us, Jasmine said quietly. They were confused by us. Our allies didn't know if we'd honor our commitments. Our enemies tested us constantly. That's not respect, that's instability. Trump's face was definitely red now. He'd expected Jasmine to get emotional, to react, to give him an opening. Instead, she stayed clinical, factual, calm. It was clearly irritating him. You know what, Trump said, leaning into his microphone. I'm tired of these people who come into politics, read some briefing books, memorize some talking points, and think they understand how the world works. You need experience, real experience. Not. He paused, looking at Jasmine with obvious calculation. Not just checking boxes, he finished. The audience went quiet. The moderator shifted uncomfortably. Jasmine knew what was coming. She'd wargamed this exact moment. Trump continued. I mean, let's be honest about what's happening here. The Democratic Party loves to parade people around, put them on stages, make them look important. But it's all about optics. All about checking boxes, race boxes, gender boxes, whatever boxes get votes. The moderator interjected. Mr. Trump, that's not. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking, Trump interrupted. She's here because of what she looks like, not because of what she's accomplished. That's the truth. That's what identity politics does. It puts people in positions they're not ready for. The studio went completely silent. Even Trump supporters in the audience seemed uncertain how to react. Jasmine stood perfectly still. She didn't speak, didn't move. Just looked at Trump with an expression that was impossible to read. 5 seconds passed. 10 seconds. The silence became uncomfortable. Trump filled it. See? No answer. Because there is no answer. It's obvious to anyone watching. This is what happens when you prioritize diversity over competence. Jasmine let another 3 seconds pass. Then she spoke, her voice even quieter than before. Are you finished? Trump opened his mouth, then closed it. Because, Jasmine continued, I want to make sure you're completely done before I respond. I want everyone watching to understand exactly what you just said. That you believe I'm on this stage not because of my law degree, not because of my election to Congress, not because of my work, but because of my skin color. I didn't say that, Trump protested. You said I'm here because of what I look like, that I'm checking boxes, that I'm not competent. Those were your exact words. Jasmine's tone remained calm. So let's talk about competence. Let's talk about qualifications. Let's talk about what actually matters. She opened her folder. I have my academic records here, my bar exam scores, my election results, my legislative record. Everything that demonstrates my qualifications for this position. Would you like to compare records? Because I'm happy to go line by line. Trump waved dismissively. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Hiding behind credentials, behind papers. The real world doesn't work like that. You're right, Jasmine agreed. The real world is about results. So let's discuss results. But before we do that, I have something else I'd like to address. She pulled out a different document from her folder. You questioned my background, my identity, whether I belong on this stage. So I think it's fair to ask some questions about identity and background in return. Trump's expression changed, just slightly, a flicker of uncertainty. Specifically, Jasmine continued, about your family, about questions that have never been adequately answered, about transparency that you've demanded from others but never provided yourself. The moderator leaned forward. Congresswoman Crockett, if you're going to make an accusation— I'm not making an accusation, Jasmine interrupted smoothly. I'm presenting information, the same way Mr. Trump just presented his opinion about my qualifications. I'm simply offering facts for the audience to consider. Trump gripped his podium. What facts? Jasmine held up the document. This is a DNA analysis report, verified by an independent laboratory. It concerns your son, Barron, specifically questions about his biological parentage. The studio erupted, not in applause or boos, but in confused noise, people turning to each other, asking what was happening, trying to understand. Trump's face went from red to white. That's my son. How dare you? I'm not questioning that he's your son, Jasmine said calmly. I'm presenting scientific evidence that raises questions about the complete biological picture, Questions that you and your family have consistently refused to address despite multiple inquiries from journalists. She looked directly at the camera. This report was compiled using publicly available genetic data, social media posts, public appearances, photographs analyzed by facial recognition software, and some additional information provided by sources who insisted on anonymity. "This is outrageous," Trump sputtered. "You can't what?" Jasmine asked. "Can't question a public figure's family? Can't raise issues of transparency? Can't demand honesty from someone who demands it from others? Because that's exactly what just did to me. You questioned whether I belong here based on my appearance, based on assumptions about my background." She held up the report higher. "This document suggests that there are significant genetic inconsistencies in your family tree. Specifically, it raises questions about whether certain relationships are exactly as publicly presented. It suggests that your daughter Ivanka may have knowledge of information that has been deliberately concealed from public view." Trump looked at his campaign manager in the front row. The manager looked panicked. "These are lies," Trump said, but his voice lacked its usual conviction. "Then release your family's genetic records," Jasmine countered. "Prove me wrong. You've demanded birth certificates from others. You've questioned other people's backgrounds for years. Surely you're willing to meet the same standard of transparency." The moderator was trying to regain control. "I need to verify the authenticity of these documents before—" "By all means, verify them," Jasmine said. "I welcome scrutiny. I welcome investigation. That's the difference between someone with nothing to hide and someone who attacks others to avoid questions about themselves." Trump had recovered slightly. "This is a desperate move. Attacking my family because you're losing the debate, because you can't defend your policies." "I've defended every policy position tonight with facts and evidence," Jasmine replied. "You've defended your positions with personal attacks and unsupported claims. And when I respond to your attack on my identity with questions about doors, suddenly it's inappropriate." She turned to face the audience directly. "Let me be clear about what this moment represents. This isn't about genetics. This isn't really even about Mr. Trump's family. This is about a simple principle. You cannot demand standards from others that you refuse to meet yourself." The audience was completely focused now. Some were nodding, others looked confused, but everyone was listening. "Mr. Trump attacked my presence on this stage based on my appearance, based on assumptions about why I'm here. He suggested I haven't earned my position, that I'm just filling a quota." Jasmine's voice remained steady. "So I ask, what has he earned? What has he proven? And what has he hidden?" Trump tried to interrupt, but Jasmine continued. "This report raises questions. Maybe they have simple answers. Maybe there's a perfectly innocent explanation for every inconsistency it identifies. But we'll never know because Mr. Trump's family doesn't provide that level of transparency. They demand it from others while refusing it themselves." She paused, letting the point sink in. "That's not leadership, that's hypocrisy." Trump recovered his voice. "You're going to regret this, going after my family. Americans don't like that. They'll see through this." "Americans will see the truth," Jasmine responded. "That when you attack someone personally, they have the right to respond. That when you question someone's legitimacy, your own legitimacy becomes relevant. That leadership requires consistency." She placed the document back in her folder. "But you're right about one thing. This isn't what Americans tuned in to see. They want to hear about healthcare, about jobs, about their futures. So let's get back to that." Jasmine looked at the moderator. "I believe there was a question about climate policy." The audience started to applaud, slowly at first, then building. Not everyone, but enough to be significant. Trump stood at his podium, visibly struggling with how to respond. He'd expected Jasmine to crumble under his attack, to get emotional, to give him the upper hand. Instead, she'd used his attack as a launching point. She'd flipped the entire dynamic, and she'd done it without losing her composure for a single second. The moderator, clearly relieved to move on, read the next question. "Congresswoman Crockett, what is your position on renewable energy subsidies?" Jasmine answered clearly, with specific policy proposals, cost analyses, and implementation timelines. She sounded like someone who'd done her homework, who understood the issue, who had actual plans. Trump, when his turn came, seemed distracted. His answer rambled. He brought up unrelated topics. He kept glancing at his campaign manager. The debate continued, but the energy had shifted. Jasmine had momentum now. Every answer she gave sounded prepared, thoughtful, reasonable. Every answer Trump gave sounded defensive, scattered, reactive. By the time they reached the final question, the difference was obvious. Jasmine stood straight, confident, completely in control. Trump looked tired, frustrated, off balance. Final thoughts? The moderator asked. Jasmine spoke first. Tonight demonstrated something important. When someone attacks you personally, you have choices. You can get angry. You can get emotional. You can let them derail you. Or you can respond with facts, with composure, with strength. She looked directly at Trump. Mr. Trump tried to make this debate about my race, my gender, my identity. He wanted to avoid discussing policy by making me defensive about who I am. But I'm not defensive about who I am. I'm proud of who I am, and I'm prepared to defend my positions with evidence, not insults. She turned back to the camera. That's what real leadership looks like. Staying focused under pressure, responding to attacks with substance, holding people accountable for their own standards, not getting distracted from what actually. Trump's closing statement was brief. He attacked Washington again, praised himself again, and promised to fight for America again. But it sounded hollow now. Scripted, like he was just going through motion. When the debate ended, both candidates shook hands briefly. Trump's grip was weak. He looked directly at Jasmine and spoke quietly enough that the microphones didn't pick it up. This isn't over. Jasmine smiled. It is for tonight, and tonight is what people will remember. The studio emptied quickly. Campaign staffers rushed to their candidates. Journalists scrambled to file stories. The audience filtered out, already arguing about what they'd witnessed. Jasmine walked backstage with her chief of staff, Marcus. That was risky, Marcus said quietly. The DNA thing. If it doesn't check out, it checks out, Jasmine assured him. I had 3 independent labs verify it. I had lawyers review it. I had geneticists explain it. The information is solid, but using it that way. He attacked my identity, Jasmine interrupted, suggested I didn't earn my position, implied I was only here because of my race. I had to respond in a way that showed strength without losing composure. Marcus nodded slowly. The audience response was interesting. That applause when you pivoted back to policy. That was the key moment, Jasmine agreed. I could have spent the rest of the debate hammering him about his family, made it personal. But that would have made me look petty. Instead, I used it to make a point about standards and accountability, then moved on. They reached her dressing room. Inside, her team was already monitoring social media reaction, tracking polls, analyzing coverage. Her communications director looked up. It's splitting exactly along expected lines. His base is calling you desperate. Your base is calling you brilliant. But the middle, the undecideds, they're leaning your way. How much? Early numbers show a 7-point swing. People saying you seemed more prepared, more professional, more in control. Jasmine sat down, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline was wearing off. What about the DNA report? How's that playing? Mixed. Some outlets are investigating it seriously. Others are calling it a distraction. But here's the interesting part. 3 major news organizations have now filed requests for the Trump family to provide genetic testing to verify or thwart your claims. Marcus smiled. So whether the report is true or not, you've put them in a position where refusing to respond makes them look guilty. That wasn't the goal, Jasmine said. The goal was to demonstrate that you can't attack someone's background while hiding your own. That transparency has to work both ways. Her phone buzzed. A text from a colleague in Congress. You just changed the conversation. Well done. Another text from a journalist. Can we talk about the DNA report? Need to verify sources. Another from her mother. I'm proud of you, baby. You stayed strong. Jasmine put her phone down. What's next? Press conference? In 30 minutes, her press secretary confirmed. Every major outlet wants a statement. We've drafted talking points focused on your policy positions, with a brief mention of the confrontation as an example of responding to attacks without losing focus. Good. Keep it about the issues, about what people actually care about. Tonight was about showing that attacks don't work if you don't let them work. Marcus sat across from her. You know he's going to come back harder. This embarrassed him, made him look weak. He'll escalate. Let him, Jasmine said calmly. Every time he escalates, every time he attacks, he proves my point. That he can't discuss policy, that he can't handle opposition, that he relies on personal attacks because he has nothing else. The press conference was packed. Journalists from every major outlet, cameras from every network, questions shouted before Jasmine even reached the podium. She raised a hand for quiet. I'll make a brief statement, then take questions. The room settled. Tonight's debate was supposed to be about policy, about the issues facing our country, about the different visions we have for America's future. For the most part, that's what we discussed. She paused, but there was a moment where Mr. Trump chose to make it personal, to attack not my positions but my identity. To suggest that I'm on that stage, not because of my qualifications but because of my appearance. Cameras flashed. Journalists scribbled notes. I want to be clear about something. Those kinds of attacks aren't new. Women face them. People of color face them. Anyone who doesn't fit a narrow definition of what leadership is supposed to look like faces them. And there are different ways to respond. Jasmine looked directly at the cameras. You can ignore them. You can get angry. You can get defensive. Or you can do what I did tonight, respond with composure, turn the attack into a teaching moment, and refocus on what actually matters. A journalist shouted a question about the DNA report. I'll get to that, Jasmine said. The report I referenced raises questions about transparency and accountability. It suggests that Mr. Trump demands standards from others that he doesn't meet himself. Whether the specific claims in that report are true or false is almost beside the point. She leaned into the microphone. The point is this: if you're going to question someone else's background, your own background becomes relevant. If you're going to demand transparency from others, you need to provide it yourself. If you're going to attack someone's legitimacy, you need to be able to defend your own. Another journalist: are you accusing Trump of lying about his family? I'm accusing him of hypocrisy, of applying different standards to himself than he applies to others. The specific details of the report can be investigated. I welcome that investigation. I provided sources. I provided methodology. Let journalists do their job and verify or refute the claims. But why bring up his family at all? Jasmine's expression hardened slightly, because he brought up mine. He made it about personal identity. He made it about whether I belong in that conversation. So I responded by asking the same questions about him. That's not unfair. That's holding someone to their own standard. The questions continued for 20 minutes. Jasmine stayed calm, stayed focused, kept redirecting to the larger point about leadership and accountability. Finally, she wrapped up. Tonight was about more than one debate. It was about how we respond to attacks, how we maintain integrity under pressure, how we hold people accountable while staying focused on what matters. She gathered her notes. Mr. Trump wanted to make tonight about me, about whether I'm qualified, about whether I belong. Instead, tonight became about him, about his standards, about his transparency, about his ability to handle opposition without resorting to personal attacks. Jasmine looked around the room. That's leadership, not controlling the conversation through attacks, but responding to attacks in a way that elevates the conversation. That's what Americans deserve from their leaders. She left the podium to a mix of shouted questions and applause. 3 days later, the polling was clear. Jasmine had won the debate decisively, not just in partisan polls, but in independent analysis, in focus groups, in undecided voter surveys. The consensus was consistent. She demonstrated composure under attack, substance in her responses, and strategic thinking in how she handled confrontation. Trump's numbers had dropped. Not dramatically, but noticeably. More importantly, his campaign was in damage control mode. They'd issued 4 different statements about the DNA report. First, denying it, then calling it irrelevant, then attacking the sources, then threatening legal action. Each response contradicted the previous one, making them look disorganized and defensive. Jasmine sat in her congressional office, reviewing the coverage with her team. CNN is calling it a masterclass in debate strategy, Marcus reported. They're showing the clip of you staying silent after his attack, letting it hang in the air before responding. They're saying that pause changed everything. It did, Jasmine agreed. If I'd responded immediately, I would have looked defensive. The pause let everyone absorb what he'd actually said. Let them understand how inappropriate it was. Then my response had more power. Her press secretary added, "The New York Times has a piece about the DNA report. They tracked down the lab, verified the methodology. They're not saying the conclusions are definitely true, but they're saying the analysis was professionally done and raises legitimate questions." And Trump's response, Jasmine asked, escalating. He's calling you desperate, dishonest, willing to attack families. But he's not actually addressing the substance. Not providing any counter-evidence. Just attacking the messenger. Marcus leaned back. That's what makes this effective. You're not saying this is definitely true. You're saying here are questions that deserve answers. And he's proving your point by refusing to answer them. Jasmine's phone buzzed. A call from a senior Democratic strategist. "Jasmine, I just wanted to say, well done. That debate performance is being studied by every campaign in the country right now. You showed how to handle personal attacks without losing your cool or lowering yourself to that level. Thank you. I had good preparation." It was more than preparation. It was instinct. Knowing when to pause, when to respond, when to pivot. That's not something you can fully prepare. That's judgment under pressure. They talked for a few more minutes before Jasmine hung up. Marcus was watching her. "You okay? This has been intense." "I'm fine," Jasmine said. "Actually better than fine. For years, people like Trump have gotten away with personal attacks because they count on the target either getting emotional or staying silent. But there's a third option, responding with strength and facts, then moving on. You've inspired a lot of people," Marcus said. "Young women, people of color, anyone who's been told they don't belong. They're seeing that you can respond to attacks without becoming the tater." Jasmine nodded. "That's what matters. Not winning one debate, but showing people that there's a way to engage with hostility that doesn't require you to become hostile. That maintains your integrity while holding others accountable." She looked at the TV where CNN was replaying the debate moment for probably the 100th time, Trump's attack. Her pause, her measured response, the audience's reaction. "This moment will outlast the campaign," Jasmine said quietly. "Because it's not really about politics. It's about how you respond when someone tries to diminish you. How you turn an attack into an opportunity to demonstrate who you really are." Marcus stood up. "You've got 3 interviews tomorrow. Morning shows. They all want to talk about the debate." "Then we talk about it," Jasmine agreed. "We talk about the importance of maintaining composure. We talk about holding people to consistent standards. We talk about what real strength looks like." She smiled. "And we talk about policy. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is supposed to be about. Not personal attacks. Not gotcha moments. But who has better plans for making people's lives better?" A week after the debate, Jasmine was invited to speak at a university. The topic was political communication and leadership under pressure. She stood before an auditorium full of students, looking at their eager faces. These were the next generation, the ones who would shape politics in the coming decades. "I want to talk about what happened at that debate," Jasmine began, "not because I want to relitigate it, but because it taught some important lessons." She clicked to the first slide. "When Donald Trump attacked my qualifications based on my appearance, he expected one of 3 reactions. Either I'd get angry and look unprofessional, or I'd ignore it and look weak, or I'd respond emotionally and give him control of the conversation." Next slide. "Instead, I did something he didn't expect. I paused. I let his words hang in the air. I let everyone understand what he'd actually said. And then I responded not with emotion, but with facts." A student raised their hand. "But you also attacked his family. Wasn't that stooping to his level?" "Good question," Jasmine acknowledged. "And that's where strategic thinking comes in. I didn't attack his family. I raised questions about transparency and accountability. I used his attack as an opportunity to demonstrate a principle. You can't demand standards from others that you won't meet yourself." She advanced to the next slide, showing the DNA report. "This document may or may not be completely accurate. Journalists are still investigating, but its accuracy isn't really the point. The point is that Trump spent years questioning other people's backgrounds, demanding birth certificates, spreading conspiracy theories. So when he attacked my background, it became fair to ask questions about his. Another student, but don't two wrongs make a right? It's not about wrongs, Jasmine explained. It's about consistency. If personal background is fair game, and Trump made it fair game, then it has to be fair game for everyone, including, that's not revenge. That's accountability. She talked for another 30 minutes about the importance of preparation, the value of staying calm, the strategic use of silence, the power of pivoting back to substance. When she finished, the applause was sustained. Students lined up to ask more questions, to share their own experiences with discrimination and attacks, to thank her for showing them a way to respond with dignity. One young black woman waited until the end. I've been told I don't belong in so many spaces, that I only got accepted to this university because of affirmative action, that I'm not really qualified. Watching you handle that attack showed me I don't have to accept those narratives. Jasmine took her hand. You never have to accept them. You respond with your achievements, your preparation, your results, and when people still won't listen, you demonstrate through your actions what you're capable of. The student nodded, tears in her eyes. Thank you. Jasmine watched her walk away, feeling the weight of what that debate moment had become. It wasn't just about her anymore. It had become something bigger, a template for how to respond to attacks with grace and strength. That was worth more than winning any single debate. The end.